It's been 300 years, right down to the day.
More like 6 months.
Now the witch is back, and there's hell to pay.
Wrong witch!
Welcome, my dear Cheshire monkeys. Today, I have a roller coaster of a video for you. If you haven't been aware of the recent events that have prevented me from uploading until now, I highly recommend you check out the last 2 videos on my channel. It gives you plenty of context of what has transpired. Many negative things, unfortunately, but today I am not here to talk about anything sad or upsetting in this video. No, today we are going back to my element, which is model painting and shenanigans. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome! I hope that by the end of this full-length feature film, video, I get to earn your subscription. And for the rest of you, welcome back. I asked all of you if you would like this video split into 2 parts instead of just one huge ass video. And all of you voted, and you said, demanded that I make this video in a full-length shot a la Scorsese. All for you to watch the adventure of a lifetime, which is painting this massive, humongous, 1/4 scale resin kit of our beloved mother. Now, first of all, I want to say that this project is not mine. This is a very overdue commission. 8 years in the making. And with that said, please do not ask me to paint anything for you. I am not doing commissions. Commissions are permanently closed, never to open again, okay? This is just something that I need to take care of now. Because my client has been patiently waiting for all this time for me to finally give his commission life. But even though I am not going to keep her, this video will serve as a memento to keep our time together in holy memory. I am a big fan of this franchise, except for Bayonetta 3, which I recently played after not being able to because I didn't have a Switch, and then I had... Not important. The only thing I have to say is that I will not say anything about it at all. Yeah, it's not worth it. The same as those $59 that I paid for that game. It wasn't worth it. This particular figure is 15 years old. It came out just a year after the original video game launched when I played it. And ever since I saw it, I always thought to myself, I hope one day, I get to paint this figure. And now, that day has come, thanks to my client. So come join me. Grab yourself a shit ton of popcorn and tons of drinks, because this is not only the biggest figure I've ever worked on, but it's also the biggest production I've ever done in the history of this channel. And I will be submitting it to the Academy for their consideration. Enough rambling. Let's dance, boys.
It's been 8 years since the last time I checked this kit, but I do know for a fact that no parts are missing. Hopefully. I also remember washing the kit back then, but I didn't record it, so we're just gonna jump right into it. Something that I really found interesting was the fact that she had actual metal parts. I've only ever worked on a single kit that had a single piece of metal in the past, so I'm looking forward to see how we'll work with these. After many years of working on kits, I've rarely ever looked at the instructions provided. Almost all of the kits are very intuitively divided where you don't really need any guides, so you're not gonna come here and tell me what to do. She also included a set of decals for the inscriptions on her ribbons, which honestly I appreciate because your girl can't free draw, much less something as repetitive and intricate as this. The charms on her arms are actually etched metal parts, not exactly casted like the others. I've never worked with this type of metal, so let's see what happens. She does have clear parts, which have barely yellowed even after 15 years. I've always wondered what the type of resin they used for these kits, because clear resin usually yellows even after a couple of years of being casted. So spill the tea. What's the type of resin you're using, people? The clear parts are obviously made for a transparent look for the hair, which we will definitely do, but those connections will need to be fixed in order for them to not look this horrid. They also have large gaps, and those will definitely need filling. Just look at how massive she is. I can barely hold her with one hand. She weighs a good 1.5 to 2 kgs fully assembled. The gems for the guns were also included as clear resin parts. Usually when I'm removing tabs on parts, I make it a point to really look at these pieces before I cut. Because it has happened to me in the past where I've cut connection keys thinking they were tabs and it hasn't been fun at all. So I take my precautions, observe twice, cut once. I have no clue what type of metal they use to cast these pieces, but they're indeed heavy. They also have tabs from the pour. Hopefully my nippers can cut them. And yeah, they can be cut, but it feels like I'm gonna take a chunk out of it without intending it, so I'm clipping tiny pieces after another from the tabs, just to be on the safe side. For the edge parts, I just took my nippers and cut them away. Well, I tried to, and then I just had to try to bend them to just take them off. She did include 3 sets of etched glasses, in case you break them, which is pretty nice if you ask me. Always have spares whenever possible. Usually when I work with commissions that will need to travel to get to their final destination, I will always study the kit before I even begin to work on it. Study it to determine which parts will be assembled and which ones will be left to be assembled by the client in order to pack them securely for the long journey home. I plan everything ahead of working on it for this simple reason, and it is to avoid breakage as much as possible. In the case of this kit, I honestly don't know why they decided to make the cut just halfway up her head when the entire ribbon flies out from it. The connection will look horrible if left that way, so I'm going to do a little mod. I'm going to use silicone putty to make a mold out of the top part of the hair where the ribbon starts to make a copy. That way I can make a quote-unquote spare from the hair to make a completely new piece that will be safely packed for my client to assemble at home. So this works for that, and also so that the ribbon won't have a horrible connection line at the top. I didn't have regular resin for casting, so I just used some clear epoxy resin I had stored and created a new piece with it. Once it cured, I took out the new piece and started to shave everything off until only the ribbon is left. When I was happy with the new ribbon, I went back to the head and sanded the original off to make a socket for the new one. And oh, does that look sexy? Look at how nicely it rests in the original place, without a damn connection line. Delicious. Mwah. Now it's just a matter of attaching and fusing it to the second part of the ribbon to make a completely new part. I'm using lots of glue and putty to secure the pin inside to keep both pieces together. So now I can actually start to work on her with the preparations done for shipping. I usually pin and then putty when working on kits, but she needs to have both steps done in tandem for this because of the scale she has. The pins on her legs are actually the largest rods I have. I can't cut them with my nippers. Instead, I brought in my Dremel with my cutting wheel for that. When I pin, the wires can usually bend ever so slightly, so I can always connect pieces with ease even if the alignment is a fraction of a millimeter off. But not with these monsters! I've only once worked on a large 1/3 scale model before, and what I've learned from that is my drilling will probably not be as precise as when I do smaller scale kits. And when all else fails, just make a super huge hole so that the pin can let the parts align even if you have to fill in those holes with putty later. parts correctly aligned, I brought out my trusty plumber's putty to fill in those huge holes for the pins. This hardens in just 15 minutes, so it lets me work relatively fast. However, I only use this putty for internal use. I never use it on the outside because it's super hard to sand and is really grainy, so I avoid using it on any visible area. When the putty hardened and the holes for the pins were securely created, shaped, whatever you want to call it, it was time to bring out the forbidden yellow mustard to do the rest of the filling because she has a lot of gaps in between all the parts, not only because of the holes that I made earlier, for the legs especially. I need to be very careful to not over putty the area on her butt because it has a lot of texture that I need to preserve. Too much putty and that will be filled out and I am screwed. While that cures, I'll continue pinning the hair to the arms using the sticky tack method, which I've already explained how to do it in my how to pin videos. I already made that tutorial, so just be sure to check it out when you have time. Don't ask me here, okay? Thanks, bye. Before the putty hardens, I make sure to go back and remove any excess that might have spilled over into those little details on her suit. When the first leg was done, now I can continue to putty the rest of the parts, as I will be able to make her stand up straight and connect the rest of the parts to her easily. Let's pin the new piece to the head, making sure to fill in the new socket with obviously putty so that it can have a snug fit. The ribbon needs a little bit of sanding to adjust the shape so that the other part can connect to the head without making the other one slip out of its place. New do. Both ribbons connect snugly together in harmony. The arms will be another part of the kit that will remain unassembled for a safe journey, so they need a large pin to hold them, particularly the left arm as it goes straight down and it could potentially fall off if left too loose. When I was seeing how to pin the face to the head, I realized I wouldn't be able to actually do that because of the shape. Pinning in there would have made it extremely hard to connect later. So the solution to this predicament is adding magnets, putty, and then glue to permanently secure it to the head later. When the magnet was installed and glued, I then continued with the putty work to take advantage of time, so the arms were worked alongside the face. Making sure to add a shit ton of Vaseline to the face so that it won't stick in the socket. Something that will definitely not come back to bite me in the ass later. Since she has connections where there's a lot of texture that I need to keep, I came up with the idea to make a stencil out of the same texture with the same silicone mold putty I used earlier. That way, I can use it to shape the putty when removing the seam on the legs. I made 2 samples from different sides of her torso to use way down the road. And this is what I mean by studying your kit. Think about what you do in your head a la Jet Li in Hero.
但决斗已经在彼此的意念中继续展开。
That way, you can anticipate problems you might encounter and prepare a solution for it way before it happens. One of the middle parts was her Umbra watch, which honestly gave Barbie accessory vibes, no real detail. So I took the liberty of upgrading it with a 3D printed one designed for actual cosplay and shrunk it down to scale her little chest. Little. Coming back to the arms, I think a pin just won't hold it. So we're adding additional magnets to help keep it in place. These are parts that will be shipped unassembled from the bot, so it will help my client greatly when he puts her together once it reaches him. I've never liked leaving magnets to do the job of actual pins, as some other people like to do. Magnets can only hold so much before parts fall off if you move or if you touch them, but adding them as extra support on top of the pins is an excellent idea to give your figures that stability they need, especially if they're this big and heavy. Also, be sure to install the magnets on the right side of the pole so that they won't reject themselves when you try to stick them together, because wouldn't that be a pain in the ass to fix? Am I right? I don't usually putty both connecting parts, but there was still a very small gap left in between the shoulders even after adding the initial round of putty, so that's why I'm applying it on the arms this time around. Also to make sure that those damn magnets never move even in their dreams. The left leg gave me so many issues, between having difficulties installing the pins to align and how heavy these parts are and the fact that the sculpt isn't perfect. There were some uneven connections between the butt and the leg. It didn't help that there was a huge gap in between the textured part too. Something that needs to be corrected with putty to fix it. I'm just going to sand down the uneven connections and then cast some magic to fix this mess. Apply the putty and a ton of Vaseline to the leg. Attach them to move around the putty and remove any excess without smearing it to the sides to avoid that texture detail, because the idea here is to preserve as much of it. You don't want to notice this correction at all either, so timing is everything when doing something like this. You have approximately 45 minutes of working time with our forbidden yellow mustard. It's a paste consistency for the first 20 minutes after you mix it, but then it begins to harden, and it's when it has a little bit more consistency and it no longer sticks to your finger when you touch it that you can actually still mold it to shape just a little bit. This is the moment you have to go back immediately and use that stencil you made earlier to recreate that texture before it's too late. Pushing it on to smush that still malleable putty and cover the gap while keeping that detail. Then just cut off the excess that spread to her leg, and we now have a seamless gap filling with the original detail making completely inconspicuous.
Technology!
With that nerve-wracking experience done, I can now continue to putty the rest of the parts, like her bangs and especially her new and improved watch. She does have earrings, so we're drilling in some holes to attach them later. Her mouth had a little bit of excess resin between the lip and the tongue. I want more definition to them, so I brought out my brand new ultrasonic cutter for such a delicate job. Let's attach the guns to her feet, going straight through it because I didn't want to bother with alignment issues, so I'll just be sure to come back later and patch that hole up. There were still a lot of gaps, so we're still filling them up. And after all that, I think we're good for putty. Okay, these charms need to dangle from her hair, and looking at the part where you're supposed to place them made me a little confused because why is this circle stub thingy here? Am I supposed to put these hoops there? They're way too small for it. I wanted to try something. These are extremely thin sheets of nickel that I can actually cut with scissors and bend with some pliers to make something like a little chain link. She did include change for them, but they're too dark and tarnished. I didn't like it, so at the time I went to Michael's and got these replacements. I attached it with a hoop I had, and in case you didn't know, because I certainly didn't, nickel is highly magnetic and it will strongly attract to any magnet.
No respect.
Okay, we're safe. Saved by the chain and magnet. Thank you, thank you.
As you can see by my reaction, I now had a solution to my problem. Magnets on her hair will keep the charms in place. Etched metal is not magnetic, so I wasn't going to be able to magnetize them, so the nickel link will solve that problem. I was a little confused as to why the chain ended there on her leg than I realized she had more charms there. Not sure how I'm supposed to attach them because the other leg has this weird circle thingy tab. I begrudgingly took out the manual, and I didn't see that on the drawing, so at that point I felt confident that it was a poor tab, and I just cut it right off. The other little charms that go on her arms had really deep sockets. I know for a fact that they're not supposed to sink, and I also saw this weird canal thingy. I assume that's where the chain will come out from, but I can't putty the chain there right now. There's still painting to do, and the chain will not only get in the way, but also get painted over. The solution to that was make another link using some pinning wire to bend it to shape so that only the hoop will be visible, but the rest of the pin will be covered by the putty and that weird canal hole thing will be filled up. I made sure the charm still fit into the hole with the pin installed just below it before I applied the putty to fill everything in, and it was just fine. The chains will reach the areas where the charms will be located, but I just really wanted to make sure that this solution would work before I installed the magnets to those little stubs. They were on the large side, so what I did was sand off as much as possible to make them smaller, basically just to hold the size of the magnets so that they won't be as visible as they are now. Let's take a moment to appreciate the ceremonious occasion to open a brand new tube of forbidden yellow mustard. May the last one rest in peace. It gave its life to pursue gap filling and perfection. May her sister continue her legacy. Now the pin is fully secured in the arm and we'll be able to attach the chain to it when the time comes without worrying about anything. Being that she has 4 identical guns, I was racking my brain as to how I was going to tell them apart, but then I checked the manual, and it turns out that they had marked which gun goes where with little dots, which I gotta admit was very ingenious.
He is smart.
The guns are full of detail, and they made sure to separate them in as many pieces as possible for you to be able to paint all of that detail, which leaves me with a little whiplash from the amount of identical pieces I'll need to work and mark to not get them mixed up. For now, let's pin the barrels to the grips. Even the triggers will be pinned. Although it was very difficult to do, I managed to get the pins in there and actually connect them by feel because I couldn't see where I was aiming inside to get the pin to go into that tiny hole. The parts that make the side of the guns were slightly warped, so all I did was take out my heat gun and just heated them up so that I can shape them back against the body of the guns, gun barrels. I don't know what you call guns or what guns are called, like body parts, so I'm sorry if I'm just calling it gun part or gun grip or barrel. What I don't know, you gun nuts, you're probably just going to be screaming down in the comment section. Unfortunately, there were very visible gaps in between a couple of the barrels and the grip, and I had to apply just a little bit of putty to close them as much as possible, making sure to apply some Vaseline on the parts that I don't want it to stick to. Again, something that will definitely not come back to bite me in the ass later. I couldn't really pin these thin parts to the body of the guns with wire. So to attach these very flat pieces, I went with adding magnets to keep them together. So I'll just glue them once painted so that they won't have a chance to fall off at all. Making sure to face the magnets on opposite sides so that they won't repeel from the other side of the body, if that makes sense. Then installing the other magnet on the other flat piece, and then screwing it up by installing them on the same sides, and yeah. Bitch was like, nah, brah, I don't swing that way. Psh. Stupid magnetic, opposite magnetic. Fuck me.
You blew it.
Okay, now being super careful when installing the rest so that I won't screw it up again. Look at that! Opposites do attract. Fucking dumbass. While the kit does have the gems for the guns, my client requested I give her real crystal gems. So I measured them and ordered some from Primero. They may not be Swarovski, but they come from the same fucking country, so tomato. These are actually pointed back, so I needed to open up and drill in a larger hole to accommodate the gem shape into the body of the gun. Adding the putty and then attaching the gems to create a brand new socket just for them. Rinse and repeat for all 4 guns. When the putty was almost hardened completely, I carefully popped them out and cut off any excess putty to leave it flush against the surface. With all that, I can now say we're finally done, just with prep. Let's take a short break to check out a little something that a company called Gallery sent me. They were so nice to send out 2 airbrushes for me to try out. I haven't heard of this brand before, so I was pretty excited to review their airbrushes when they asked me to test them out. As you can see, the package is really nice and fancy. This is their Mobius 0.2mm nozzle airbrush. And as you can see, it does come with a little bit of a bottle of lube for the gun. Something that really intrigued me was the nozzle. This doesn't have the traditional nozzle like all the other airbrushes I have. It's more like a little cannon with ridges where the air goes through. The trigger does feel like butter when you pull it, and it's honestly really nice. They also sent me their Swallowtail version, which has 3 different needles in one airbrush. This is a 0.3, 0.5, and 0.7mm nozzle for a broader coverage, which I will definitely need for painting this kit. The trigger is different with a very comfortable handle for you to hold on to it while you spray. Each nozzle does come with its respective needle for their own little container, which I definitely appreciated. They also sent me a really cool airbrush holder. Now, something I want to point out is that these airbrushes come with a quick release as their default connector, which is something amazing, honestly, because they are very much compatible with the Iwata quick release connectors that I already use. So that is a big plus for me, just for this. So let's try these out. Like I said, these come with a quick release connector by default and completely compatible with the Iwata ones that I already have. I will be using the Swallowtail one because I need to cover large areas right now. I was using the Procyon 0.05mm from GSI Creos before, but the handle is not as nice as this one, so let's try it out. Right now, I'm just applying a very light layer of primer to all the parts because I just want to be able to see where the seam lines are and sand them off. I'll also be using a gray and white primer combined because we do have a slither of skin down the legs and we need to have a light base for that skin tone. The rest will be covered in gray, and the reason why I'm just using very light layers of primer is obviously to save primer because we're basically gonna sand everything off and it's a waste. So you just a little bit, and you're good.
It is so not about saving money. You just don't want that many of us around you.
And you see, after applying a very light layer, I can already clearly see where all the seam lines are. You know, the most difficult thing about this figure is not the painting, it's actually holding the parts to be able to even apply anything on them because they're so fucking heavy. I can barely hold it with one hand. It was a pain to maneuver to get the primer on it without smudging it with my fingers by mistake. I made sure to cover the gem sockets that I made because I don't want any paint to get in there. We're just gonna use glue to attach the crystals and I don't want them to fall off along with the paint. It needs to be completely clean of everything, including primer, and it needs to be clean, okay? Let's keep it that way, keep it clean. Like I said, I'm only using white primer on the parts and sections of the kit that will require bright colors. Using gray will only darken them no matter how many layers of white you paint over it. It never looks right. I got a hold of some clear primer from Gaia Notes. I haven't been able to use this until now, and I'm glad I'm finally playing with it. I was using gloss varnish in the past to quote-unquote prime clear parts, but there's nothing better than actual primer to get your paint to fully stick. Unfortunately, it's still clear, and locating the seam lines will still be a challenge, but hey, at least it's primed! Through all this, the airbrush worked really well. I didn't even have any issues. The trigger was so smooth and the performance was so nice. So if you're looking for an airbrush like this for a broader coverage and the ability to change needle sizes on the fly, I can definitely recommend this. The link to purchase is down in the description box, along with a little discount code just for you for supporting this channel. Once the primer was on, it was now time to remove all the mold lines using my trusty scraper to go faster, and then just finish up with fine sanding sponges on everything. I also returned to patch that pinhole up from before. Trying to sand off the little bit of putty I added was complicated because no matter how careful I was to not sand off the lines, it still happened. But it was an easy yet a tedious fix to draw them again with an etching tool. When that was fixed, I went back to removing the seams from the rest of the parts, using several tools on top of my scraper like a polishing tip with the Dremel, and then just finishing up with some polishing sponges. When sanding tight and hard to reach places becomes a problem, I just bring out my old sanding tool and take that little strip of sanding paper in between all of those spaces. The seam line on the body comes from the middle on the top and it goes down, and it starts to go to the sides in places where they're actually able to hide them as best as they could by avoiding any and all of the texture on her body, which I honestly really appreciate. There were some little sections where the seam connected with parts of the design of the rose, but it was easy to redo those little grooves again later. I brought out my ultrasonic cutter to clean up the chains because there were still some of the original wire used to attach them to the sculpt when they casted this, and I wanted them to look as clean as possible. Yeah, these are not sculpted chains. These were real chains used when they made the sculpture back in the day. So they had to attach them somehow, and I assume wire was the way to go. Unfortunately for me, the seam line goes exactly on the chains down to her foot. So, scraping off the mold lines was easy, except when it came to the chains, because that meant sanding each and every link to remove them. The seam near the foot was very uneven, and I didn't want to scrape it to even it out, because it would look like I took a chunk out of it due to this being a curved area. So I just made sure to fill that seam in with some CA glue, scrape off the excess, and sand to finish it off. Actually pretty easy to locate, thankfully. So I just took a polishing stone with the drill and went at it. Unfortunately, locating the mold lines in between the hairs is extremely hard. To be able to do it, I had to actually heat up the strands and bend them temporarily so that I can have access to those seam lines to sand them off. Once I was done, I reheated them again and placed the strands to how they were before. While the bangs were casted in clear resin, they will still be painted opaque, so gray primer was applied. It didn't really matter. When everything was sanded and polished, it was now time to reprime with full coverage. And this is how she looks like temporarily assembled before painting. I don't usually do this, but hey. As you can see, the chains were added to the charms, and they sit exactly where they need to be thanks to those little magnets and our friend Nickel. The watch looks amazing on her as well, much better than what she originally came with. Overall, she's amazingly huge. She is not the biggest kit I've worked on before, but she is the second one of this caliber to grace my table. I wondered if the metal parts could be polished because they looked way too dull, not exactly tarnished, but just dull. I added some polishing compound to test a small bit of it and polished it with my Dremel, and damn, she looks amazing. The before and after looks so different and more chromy. I'm leaving the metal without any primer because I want to keep that metallic look. But I also want it to look more reflective, even after applying the gold that I have planned for her. So I am polishing each and every little charm that was casted in metal. Some of them had imperfections that I also sanded off carefully. But for the most part, it was just making sure to polish them as best as I could, honestly. Including her earrings. They have these little stubs casted that are supposed to be the little red gems, but I don't like how it looks. So you know what that means? Real crystal gems for replacements. Let's chop these little nubs off and give these earrings the bling they deserve.
Smashing!
I also spent a good amount of time looking online for tiny, and I mean tiny, real zirconia crystals for the watch. Fortunately for me, I did find ones that fit perfectly, and now we can also have a blinged up watch to go with everything. The edge charms came in two, one for each face. I'm not really sure how to attach them, so the only thing that I can think of was just using some CA glue, but making sure to scuff the inside with a rough sanding sponge. And carefully aligning them, then using some alligator clips to keep them from moving while it cures or dries, whatever you want to call it. When it came to painting the metal parts, I had to pick up a right gold for it, and that was a feat on itself. But I did end up buying a different chain replacement, but this one is real gold plated, unlike the other one. It has a much nicer tone, and that means I need to choose the paint that will match it as close as possible, because this is the real shit. Out of all the golds that I bought, I picked the blue gold one. Then I proceeded to prime the metal charms with actual metal primer that I had stocked away somewhere. It's also a clear primer, but it remains slightly tacky when dry. So you need to prime and then immediately paint afterwards. If not, little bits of dust will end up on the surface. This is the reason why I never used this again afterwards, like many, many years ago. Polishing the metal parts helped a lot to maintain a certain level of shininess to the surface once the paint was applied. Gold paint or any metallic paint is slightly sheer, so I didn't have to use black as a base to get that metallic effect to come through, and the results are pretty close to how the gold chain actually looks like. Before I begin to paint the glasses, I need to mask off the little design so that the color will come through with the silver base much easier than it would if it would be over black paint. The charms are supposed to have crystal gems on them for the design. The only one that included a clear piece was just for one, and the rest didn't come with anything. So I took some UV resin to create our own little gems, making sure to mix in with red ink and then applying the first coat to cover the gem socket, and then coming back with a second layer to dome it and create that gem effect. I'm very happy with how the resin helped create the gems, but there were still some tiny little bits that I couldn't add any resin to, so I opted to just paint them with some enamel paint. With the charms done, I proceeded to finally paint the glasses. After removing the liquid masking, I could now go and paint the little butterfly design on them by having my own little personal reference for it. I'm just using enamel paint to do it because it's easy to correct if I mess up. Aha, not too shabby if I say so myself. When that was done, I went over with some UV resin to coat everything and make it look a little bit more like plastic than metal. Also to help cover up the sharpness of the metal, because I could scrape off the paint on the face if I'm not careful, which happened in the priming phase. After a small break, let's get back to actually painting. I'll be using the Mobius airbrush from Gallery because we're now going to need fine detailing. Again, if you're interested in purchasing a great little airbrush that doesn't break the bank, this would be it. Link is down below in the description, along with a little discount code from me to you. As always, we start with the skin first. I'm just going to go over with white because the primer is always like kind of off-white. I need pure white to paint over for the skin. I am also going over and painting white to all of the parts and the areas that have very bright colors or just, white, like her gloves. For the skin, I'll just go with some Lascivas Red for a change. I normally use orange for anime characters, but she's a real person per se, so I'll use a more realistic undertone for her. For the hair, we're doing just as we did with the Senshi Princess figures. We are going to start with clear for the tips, go semi-opaque for the middle sections, and go full opaque for the roots or the base so that we have a progressive gradient from clear to opaque. Holding the hair was also complicated because of how big the parts were. I made sure to paint a section, let it dry, and then hold it from that part to paint the rest, making sure it was fully dry before doing it and not mess up the paint job, because we wouldn't like that, would we? Bayonetta's hair looks hella shiny, like we're talking glowy through the entire game. And even though it's jet black, she does have highlights, a lot of them for that effect. But while the game made the shine look white, I'm just gonna go with some sapphire blue to give her a nice highlight color to contrast over the black. Red ribbons are red, of course. Again, trying to paint these fuckers was really hard because they belong in spaghetti light. I couldn't keep them without flying all over whenever I sprayed onto them, so it was a pain. I've never liked painting white, much less shade white with gray. It makes it look really dirty, but she has great tones for the shading in the game. So we gotta do what we hate to do and just keep it for accuracy. This next part, some of you will probably go, oh my god, Leona, the guns are not that color. And to that, I will say, you can't fucking blame me. The colors look completely different depending on what references you're looking at. In the game, the guns look kinda magenta, so I did a test to see what color looked best. I first tried mixing purple and red metallics, which gave me a color close to the reference in-game. I painted with a black base, then added silver because metallic colors will look better over a bright tone unlike gold and silver. Metallic colors that are not gold and silver. Key note there. Once the silver was on, I decided to actually try magenta over it using primary paint. It was okay-ish, but it didn't convince me. And then I tried my mix, and I liked it much better. But then I saw a picture of Hideki Kamiya holding said guns, and they were red? Excuse me? Why are all these references referencing different colors then? I can't trust official references at this point, and I just decided to do plain metallic red over the magenta I had already painted on. So it looks red, but with a purplish kind of slight undertone, basically coming to a middle ground between what I see in the game and what I see in the references from Platinum Games. Make up your fucking minds! Not too much to shade with pastels this time. We're just going to retouch some strands on the hair. First with some black over some areas where I don't want the paint to fully highlight, if that makes sense, and then just shade the rest of the skin as I always do. I'm making sure to blush Bayonetta's face in this stage so that I won't have to do it later in the face up, because time. It didn't really register in my mind that this kit would require a lot of masking. At first glance, she looks like she just has a black suit on, but then oh boy, was I absent-minded when I started to mask her. This is just the first round of masking, as you will soon see. I just made sure to mask all of her painted skin to proceed to the next painting phase, which is all the black stuff. Masking the gloves was my first nightmare. I didn't notice at first that the inside of her palms were actually red, so I took out my 0.5mm masking tape to outline those edges. Then I filled everything else with some more masking tape and finished with liquid masking to avoid any paint bleeding. This intricate design here was also something that didn't register in my mind that I had to do. At this point, I had spent my first 5 hours of masking that day, and it was still not even a fraction of what was to come.
Because brushstrokes, Nancy, brushstrokes.
We haste it forever!
Welcome to the second level of hell, masking Scarborough Fair. Now, at first I thought it was gonna be kinda easy, then I realized, and yes, I'm gonna say that I realized a lot of things in this video, hindsight is 2020, that the design was a little more complex than I had originally remembered it being. So please enjoy this clip of me racking my brains around how to try and decipher what should be masked and where to just paint the gold parts on this.
Turn the volume. I've been thinking a lot about our relationship.
I have too.
Okay. So you want to go steady?
Sounds good to me. Does that mean you were acting so idiotic last night? I knew something was up.
Well, that is, you were right at the time.
Okay.
Right after my arthritis pills.
Even the audience in the background was laughing at me for not being able to figure it out right away. But after a few hours, I was finally able to figure it out and finished masking the first one out of 4.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
Now, if you're wondering how much time I actually spent working on this project, let's just say that I will give you movie references so that you can calculate how much time I actually spent working on certain sections thanks to a movie or a show that I was watching in the background. So yeah, movie running time it is to calculate how much time I spent on this. For this particular portion of the project, which is barely starting, I was already into season 4 of Home Improvement. Yep, and we're just starting.
As I was about to mask this part of the guns, I realized that I should have painted everything gold first instead of going straight to the main color, because masking gold stripes would have been way easier than trying to mask the red parts. And at this point, I had just decided to paint over so I can spend less time in masking hell. I mean, I've already repainted the guns twice. Lots more to the pile. Remember that part about the references not referencing? Well, I thought her sock thingies, well, her little panties, were like a lavender color. Hence why I started to pre-shade with burgundy. But then I saw her in-game again and the color looked more like gray. So I just went back and painted over with gray to match, and I'm not mad at it. I actually gave it a really nice tone with the lavender under it, so yeah, I guess happy accident. It was now time to paint the first part of her suit. I'm doing a black pre-shadings because she has 3 different tones of gray on top of the black, believe it or not. So we're painting the first section with a mid-gray that I custom mixed. Like I said, this is a custom mix, and I did, I believe, 2 white to 1 black-ish to get mid-gray for the inner part of the suit. I'll go over with regular gray to highlight the folds and some other sections like her inner thigh. Then I'm quickly going over with some pastels to define some shadows just a bit before I continue with the next round of masking. I kind of forgot the inner part of the guns were gold and black, so I repainted the grips again for a much easier masking time, although at this point I don't even know if it was worth it or not, but here we go again. To cut the perfect circles, I'm bringing out my compass cutter because...
Of course!
It makes it much easier to make it accurate to size when I need to cover the paint to do a smaller circle for the gold. Then we get to mask the grip with many tiny and thin pieces of tape and plenty of coffee because this is gonna be an all-dater because I don't work at night, I just do day. Fun fact, I played a little Q&A over on my Instagram when I was masking to reply in between breaks. I had a lot of fun answering your questions and I will definitely do that again, so be sure to follow me over there if you haven't.
Macaroni with the chicken strips.
One down, 7 more to go.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Let's move on.
Mommy. Sorry. Mommy. Sorry. Boobies.
We know her hair comes out from her triceps, so we're gonna do some freehand liquid masking to emulate some of the hand strands, or at least attempt to. Like I said, her suit has layers, something that I came to discover much later in this game that I call my own personal hell, or in this case, like 1,000 shades of gray. So we're gonna mask the side that I already painted to continue with the next one. I'm just going to cover the inner part with regular tape and leave the edges close to the chains to be masked with liquid masking so that the liquid can basically take the shape of each and every chain link. Same goes for the torso. Let's continue where we left off and paint with the color of my soul. I mean paint with all my soul, which this kid has been sucking me dry with.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light.
No, you dumbass. Wrong game. It's the same director, but it's still the wrong game. With the gloves, I first did a pre-shading with purple, then applied red over it because they be red. But after I finished, I realized that they're not exactly bright red, but more of a maroon color. Maroon, you fucking moron!
What a maroon.
Okay, it's an easy fix. Just add a couple layers of clear brown and we're back in business. Let's let's continue with the next shade of gray for the rest of her suit. Before I can mask again, I need to get some black washes into those little tiny inscriptions on her suit with some enamel paint. Symbol after symbol, one by one. And let's not forget to add a little bit of pastel shadings to that red to the gloves before we dive into masking hell level 3. Yes, yes. Well, it's been a long journey so far, and before we can continue, we need to take a moment after all of that suffering to bring you a little bit of peel prawn. Hey, did you forget? This is my channel, and if there's something that's always consistent is that pleasure is usually short-lived here. That's right. We have our first real mishap. Paint stripping! I mean, it's not that bad. It's just a tiny area that are easily fixed with some last-minute surgery. Before the grips of the last two guns can be finished, I need to finish masking the entirety of the gloves, so...
Yeah, Doc? It's me, Primer-kun.
Oh, hey, how are things going? Is anything wrong?
Oh, I'm getting kind of worried about Queenie. She's got that look in her eye.
Look in her eye? Oh, what look in her eye? Oh, that look in her eye.
Yeah, that look in her eye.
Keep an eye on her and let me know if things get worse.
Yeah. I'll have you on speed dial.
You know the drill. Black, then mask, and then paint metallic, and we'll continue with masking at this point. You know what I've been doing so far.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
Finally, let's paint the rest of the hair on her suit and body. I was about to start painting the shoes when I ascertained that something was off.
Damn it. Am I supposed to be red? I want to see it red. Is it red? Feet pics, feet. Yeah, fucking red. Fuck me now.
Ah, yes. How could we forget that our dear mummy uses nothing but the best luxury shoes that are definitely not made in China and sold for thousands of dollars once they slap on the Louis Vuitton label to sell at those expensive boutiques? We're gonna come back to that later. Right now, we're just gonna concentrate on painting the rest of the black parts of the body, okay? In case you haven't noticed, I am covering the ribbons on her hair with just my hand as to not overspray because I can't mask it yet. So I am leaving this part of her upper body unpainted until I finish those ribbons. Let's finish off with some super glossy sealers to make those parts pop even more. I unmasked the guns off camera because honestly, I didn't know what day it was, and at that point, I forgot to turn on the camera. But I'm glad I didn't because you wouldn't have to witness the live horror as I removed that tape and even more paint came off. Something I'll tackle in a bit, but for now, I actually need to remove all of the masking from the hand to see what I got because something inside me urged me to do it. Fortunately for me, my spidey senses were wrong and it came out pretty good. But that doesn't mean that the edges don't need touch-ups to really sharpen those lines. We'll get back to that later. Let's also remove the masking on the gem sockets just in case. There was a little bit of stripping on the gold rings, but nothing that a tiny dot of gold won't fix. Let's do some detailings on the guns and paint that signature on them. I'll be using some enamel paint for the black in case I need to correct anything at first. When the black was done, I brought out that blue gold with some mild retarder to be able to brush on the paint. Lacquer paint is not really made to be brushed on but airbrushed, but this solution lets the paint dry slower, letting it level after each stroke, which helps a ton for a smooth finish. One camp nowhere later and the first gun was done. It took me a whole avatar weight of water to finish the other three. So, in this channel, we're usually averse to decals. They're insulting, but only when it comes to the eyes. When it comes to things like these, I may be stubborn, but I'm not stupid, most of the times. And I'm gonna take advantage of this to detail the ribbons. Now, they twist and turn a lot, and the decals are pretty much printed in a straight line, so I'm just gonna cut them in sections so that I can transfer them easily in chunks. So let's cut. Wait a minute. Bingo!
Ha!
I'm not sure if it was the type of decal paper it was printed on or if it was the age of the decal, but it took a long time for these to separate for me to transfer. They also needed a shit ton of decal softener because they were stiff as a board, and the adhesive wasn't great, but that's what the decal setter was for, which I had both. Transferring the decals to the longer ribbons was definitely a challenge, and the first little piece of the strip came out like a pancake. You always ruin the first one. But thankfully there was enough spare decals in case that happened, which it definitely happened to me. Also, filming this entire project has been extremely uncomfortable because of the size of the parts, so I either had to concentrate on holding and working on the piece or trying to focus the camera on what I was working with without me contorting my head in a way where I could still see what I was doing and not get in the shot. So fun times. Yes, fun times. Sorry, I owe you that one. Once the decals were applied, I could finally mask the ribbons on her head and finish painting the hair. And before I forget, let's paint those red soles on her shoes that are 100% made by Umbra Magic and not a Chinese manufacturer. Finally, let's do the last bit of the hair. And the rest of the shoes too, because yes, of course, off-camera masking is a thing. Live with it. Now you think that would be the last bit of it, but you forget the chains. The chains on her head that I honestly didn't have the strength to film while I masked because I was on my last bit of patience for it. You know, when you've spent an immeasurable amount of time building up to something that took a lot of concentration, effort, and time, also that the final payout would last but a few minutes, feels like you were robbed of something.
I mean, it's not like somebody out there can't relate, right? I mean, you've been looking forward to something for so long, and then it ends just as fast as it began. I mean, it's not like you didn't enjoy it. It was good. But then you're left with the immortal words of every woman out there alive. Was that it?
I knew that this kit would require some touch-ups, but I wasn't expecting what happened next. Okay, let's not panic. I can definitely fix that quickly. Let's just remove the rest. The amount of paint stripping was something I was not prepared to handle. Not in the sleep deprivation state I was in, completely unrelated to paint this kid, by the way. I've had many times in the past where paint stripped on me, but not at this scale, and absolutely no pun intended. But as I removed piece after piece, it felt like someone was stabbing me again and again. It became too much. In fact, just listen to my live reaction.
Mindwell Clinic, this is Dr. Brainspains talking.
Doc, we're losing her.
Oh, what is she doing?
She started laughing, and not the happy laugh.
What do you mean?
She's creeping me the hell out. That's what she's doing.
What's she doing?
I can't really see, but she's throwing her tweezers all over the place.
Are you sure it's not out of the ordinary?
No, it is not.
Shush it or I'll decan you.
Come quick. I'm afraid.
Yep, complete freak out to the point of laughter.
Times.
For those of you wondering what I had in the background, that was Predator. And I kid you not, I did not time this in any way, shape, or form. Yep, Arnold did the best interpretation of my emotions at the precise moment. I was extremely stressed, and I think the tense music from that scene just exasperated everything so much that I felt forced to take a break and just go downstairs to try out my new hobby.
Now, stripping, unfortunately, can happen because of several things. It could happen because you didn't thoroughly clean the kit before you started to work on it. You know, kits have mold release when they come out of the mold, and that little grease stays on the surface, and you have to clean it off. You have to remove every bit of it. If not, stripping happens. The other thing that could happen is that when you apply Vaseline to parts that are connecting, so that the putty won't stick together to the parts, you know, you're supposed to clean that Vaseline as much as possible, very, very well, in fact, because then you maybe didn't clean it well enough, and there was a little bit of grease left. So it's still grease, and it's still on the surface, which after analyzing what happened to me, I think it was a combination of three things. It was a combination of me maybe not cleaning the kit thoroughly enough. I mean, it was a very old kit, and I do remember cleaning it. The other one was that I used a shit ton of Vaseline on all of the connecting parts that had putty, and that I didn't want the parts to stick together permanently. So I had to use Vaseline, and I think I smudged Vaseline on part of the surface where I didn't intend to, and I didn't notice. And the other one is that it's a fucking mystery of life. That's the third reason. It's a fucking mystery of life, because even though you clean thoroughly most of the times, It still happens. Mysteries of life.
Interestingly, not a single area of the skin painted had any stripping. I was expecting it after everything, but I couldn't understand why it didn't happen to those areas, but it did to the rest of the body and even the guns. Time and time again, I am shown that no matter how many years you have up your sleeve, and no matter how many times you think you've done the same thing over and over, thinking to yourself that you've mastered it, the gods come down and let you know you still haven't mastered shit. You get cocky, overconfident, maybe even a little egotistical. But this hobby will keep teaching you one thing, and that is humble yourself. You could do everything right and still fail tremendously at it. Hours of grueling work, days of meticulous, careful masking, all for the paint to just fly away with each strip of tape you remove. Something like this can definitely make someone quit altogether, but others will take it as a learning experience and learn yet again from it. As someone who has been doing this for almost 20 years, I can definitely tell you that this is still unimaginably disheartening, frustrating, and even infuriating, and it makes me want to throw it out the window. It still affects me, and it makes me question my skills even after all this time. But there's also something else that you'll learn, and that's perseverance. So while I might feel like a wounded animal right now, there's always tomorrow, and in between that, a good night's sleep for a clearer mind to fight again. You come back with a big fat cup of coffee and you go at it one more time. The way I fix paint stripping is by first analyzing where the paint was affected. If it was on a smooth surface, like her boob, I go in and polish the area. Not sand it, but polish it. Just enough to level the paint that was left behind. Polish first with a 400 grit, and then finish with 600 to 800, and if possible in a circular motion. And ever so gently and careful to not touch the areas that were not affected. It also helps greatly to make extra paint when you're doing custom colors and just keep extra in case something like this happens. That way, in case of emergencies, you can always go back, grab your stash, and use it to paint over any mishaps like these. I didn't want to mask again and risk any more stripping, so I'm just making sure to cover areas I don't want to overspray with my fingers. I set the compressor to a minimum and gently pull back on the trigger while spraying as close as I can to the surface. I didn't do a good enough job polishing this area, so I made sure to go back and polish a bit more to smooth the surface, then went over and painted again, and this time it wasn't noticeable. If a stripped area is close to another portion that could really mess up by the overspray, I leave that to be painted by hand, which was the case for a few portions just next to the chains. But here's where the texture is your friend in situations like these. If there's a lot of it, you can take that same paint and brush it on, and any brush strokes will be camouflaged thanks to that. So for the areas that were too close to the skin or the chains, I opted to retouch by hand later. I also use plastic wrap to just keep any overspray from happening if I can get away with it. Once the first round of touch-ups was done, I proceeded to do the remainder of the lines on the edges between the skin and the suit. Even though there wasn't any stripping there involved, I still needed crisp lines everywhere. When that was done, I continued with doing the ribbon touch-ups on the edges because the airbrush couldn't really reach them. And finally, since the hair was glossy, I took advantage of that fact and decided to use enamel black paint, which is equally as glossy as this, and use it to touch up the areas that I needed. Enamel paint levels itself really nicely, so most, if not all, the strokes will disappear. I normally seal hair with satin. I never seal full gloss because I've always felt like it made the figure look really cheap. But Mummy is special, and her hair demanded to have a glossy finish, believe it or not. The decision to go against my nature paid off once I was faced with doing all these touch-ups because it made it easier and less painful, and I didn't have to bother with using the airbrush to seal again with whatever finish it originally had. I just straight from the bottle and it looks flawless. The feet didn't have any stripping, but it did have the opposite, which was a little bit of paint bleeding. I do not recommend this at all if you've never done it, but you can go in with an X-Acto knife and carefully scrape off just that layer of paint and keep the one beneath. If you're very, very careful. Like I said, I don't recommend it if you don't know how to do it.
I think I might just put a knife in it.
I think that's a really good idea.
See if it works. Oh yes, it does. Beautifully.
These were the tiny bits of stripping that I didn't go over with the airbrush. I gently brush on those little dots than have overspray on the gold that cost me hours of work. And to have to do it all over again would probably send me very much. When all that was done, I finally went in with some gold to touch up the bottom and the sides of the chains, because the liquid masking sometimes covered a bit too much, and we need to define those links just a bit more. Let's not forget to detail Rosa's memorial on Mummy's body. The gloves did need a little bit more touching up around the areas where it holds the gun, because honestly, it was impossible to get masking to do the work that you intended in such tight places. So in between the fingers and the palms were the areas where I needed the most attention. almost done. All the touch-ups are good to go. What day is this? I don't remember anymore. If you've been here before, you know that I cannot leave connection seams visible where they're not supposed to be, like her hair and her leg connections. So I'm mustering up the last bit of patience to fuse those seams together and make them seamless. I'll be using UV resin to work as my putty, sand it off carefully and paint over by hand because like hell am I risking to spray where the white is nearby. Again, taking advantage of using enamel paint to retouch those sanded parts, and then finish up with painting over streaks of highlight with that sapphire blue paint to give back that effect to her. Okay, here's the most nerve-wracking moment in the entire project. The masking and the paint stripping didn't put me on edge the way this is doing. It was now time to fuse the legs that are heavily textured and make it look like a single piece without losing any of that precious texture. First of all, we have to bring the Scarborough Fair of glues, and that's epoxy glue. Now, I don't use this often unless I'm working with really large or heavy pieces that I need to glue together and attach. I normally use gel super glue, which does the job just fine, but this requires something more hardcore. After the glue is set and cured, the next day I came back to remove those seams. Just like I did in the prep, I'll be using our forbidden yellow mustard, but added a couple of drops of black lacquer paint to it to tint it, hence why it looks kind of green. But I am going to proceed and add just a little bit, enough to cover the small gap in the connections and let it sit for 20 minutes, timed. Once the putty was no longer pasty, I immediately went in with my stencil and pressed that in before it finished hardening on both legs. As you can see, there was enough putty in there to cover the gap, but not to the point where it would overspill once I pressed on it. And I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I'm actually pretty proud of pulling this off. No sanding needed at all, and all the texture was perfectly preserved and created. Usually, when you want to fuse a connection, you putty in the middle of painting and sand smooth to continue painting. But you can't do that here. You need to think of ways around it, and using a stencil for texture will help greatly in these situations. I also removed the seam connection on the inside of her crotch area off camera because honestly, I needed to be able to hold and move her comfortably without me worrying about getting the perfect shot of it. It was all done, sanded smooth, and retouched. When everything was said and done, all I did was go back with my airbrush like it did last and finish with hand brushing. I'm honestly pretty surprised I was able to pull this off, being that it was the first time I did something like this. And it kind of looks like a fold, but unless you've watched this video, you wouldn't be able to tell where the seam was located. The final touches to the guns and accessories are just the gem, so off we go! The guns are technically finished, but there's something missing and it wasn't included in the original decal set, and that's Rodon's logo. I took the liberty of printing them out on the decal paper and also scanned the original decals that she came with to keep as extras in case I needed more. I could always print them out. So 2 more sets of that along with the logos were sent to the printer and I got this. Making decals is relatively easy. All you need is just decal paper, an inkjet printer, and gloss varnish to seal once you print it out to lock the ink in. So let's apply these to the guns the way it was originally intended. Attaching the metal parts to the guns was a little tedious and a little nerve-wracking. The kit came with only 10 hoops, but I needed more than that for the actual chains on her hair and the rest of the charms. Luckily for me, I had an old cheap bracelet that I could use for spare links to attach everything. Very carefully opening and closing the links so that I won't damage the paint on the metal parts was pretty nerve-inducing, but once attached, boy, did it look amazing. At that point, I was okay with using 4 of the hoops to attach the little chains to the guns and finish them off. It was now time to install the chains. The instructions do tell you how long you need them to be, so I cut 4 strands to size. Unfortunately, they're not magnetic, but there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is that your girl is allergic to nickel and can only wear silver or gold jewelry. The good news is that I had fantasy jewelry and it's made out of nickel. And as we said, nickel is very magnetic. So now I won't have to create those links as I thought I would. I will be able to use some of my old charms that I was never able to use and donate them to get those chains to stay in place. It's the final stretch. That's right, my little treasure monkeys. It is time for the face-up, leaving the best for last as always. First, I'll do her makeup with pastels and then proceed to do her eyes and mouth using the enamel over lacquer techniques as in previous videos. I I didn't want to paint her mouth with the airbrush, so I decided to go full pastels for the tongue, cause who has the time, am I right? When the makeup and the tongue were done, I sealed with the first layer of gloss lacquer to begin with the eyes. I've already made a video tutorial on how to do this technique and how it works, so if you want to learn how to do it yourself, just head on over there and watch it at your own convenience. Bayonetta's eye colors are like a gray tending to look like light blue. I couldn't really pinpoint the tone, so I just went with chrome silver at this point because, you know, it works. I'm making sure to do some liner color on her lips to proceed with the actual lipstick color, which, believe it or not, is just pink Pearl X powder mixed in with clear enamel, and oh my god, it looks amazing. Now, I wanted to do something really special for her, and that was to give her real eyelashes. Unfortunately, there weren't any barbershops around that catered to insecure men with long eyelashes to go and have them cut off because they make them look less masculine, so I wasn't able to procure said eyelashes, so falsies were the next best thing. How I'll go about doing this is cutting the very tips of each lash, taking a very thin brush, moist tip, to grab each lash. Place a little bit of kneaded eraser on the lid to create a support wall over the eye. Apply a thin layer of UV resin on the bottom of the eyelid, and then take that brush and pick up one eyelash at a time to place them over the UV resin, one by one. When enough were placed, cure the resin and repeat until you're happy with how voluminous the lashes get, and do a final cure. It doesn't look bad at all. I did add a few more lashes to the sides, but before I did the second eye, I went back and added just a bit more eyeshadow to the lids because I wasn't fully convinced with that, with how I originally left it, so I went back and added just a bit more. I then proceeded to add the second set of lashes to the right eye, and I must say, they make her look fucking gorgeous. And we can't forget her beauty mark. I still wasn't convinced with the makeup, so I added a thin line of metallic purple over it, and oh boy, did that finally give her the look I was aiming for. Let's attach her earrings next. Like I said at the beginning, these are real crystals we're adding, so let's do some hoops to insert them into the ears. Finally, adding little gold studs to finish her look on her face. Now we can officially say Bayonetta is finished! I said the figure was finished, but I never said the project was. My client requested I make a base to his liking, and while we brainstormed for a while, we came to this final decision. The base accommodates the length of the separation from her feet, and it will also work as a lamp by making her magic circle light up. I came up with this design on Tinkercad myself and proceeded to print it out. I wasn't sure how this printer would perform since the last time, since this is the first print in the new place. But I was pleasantly surprised that it worked just fine. Unfortunately for me, Big Bertha wasn't the one to betray me this time. Nope, that was my Saturn III. I had never had accidents where the FEP films ripped in the middle of printing and leaving resin spills on the screen until today. Yep, no matter how much I tried to clean the screen, the clear resin apparently sticks to it forever. So I had to use a different printer to get it done and order a replacement for my poor printer. Rest in peace. But hey, at least the main pieces for the base were printed successfully on the first try. As I've mentioned in past videos, I do not like to leave printed resin hollowed out. But the last few times I used casting resin to fill those prints made them warp. So I'm trying something new right now. This is water putty. You mix water with the putty powder, and it's supposed to dry hard as a rock while still being able to pour it. And I want to see if this is a good alternative for my original method of using casting resin to fill in printed resin. I thought everything was going fine until I came back a few days later only to find the walls of the base completely inflated. I honestly don't know what happened. I have a theory though. I use Swallowtail fast resin with minimal internal supports. The resin felt soft and crumbly and not at all rigid. Maybe it was the moisture from adding too much water on my first try. So I did a second round, this time using the weaved 3D infill that Lychee makes, using less water with the powder, and I thought that fixed the problem, so I proceeded to just sand and work on the rest of the base. I printed some clear butterflies because my client wanted her little butterfly trails on her feet. And whatever the client wants, the client gets. So I printed them in lots of different sizes to place them on the base to make little trails. I managed to print the magic circle and I prepped it to have it ready to paint. Until the same fucking thing happened to the second copy of the printed base.
You know, when you play the game and you're trying to pass a level, and you keep on dying over and over again. You keep on getting that little screen like, continue, yes. Once you get to a certain number that you no longer see on screen, the game automatically dumbs down the difficulty for you without you noticing or asking for it. It patronizes you so that your smooth brain can finally, pass said level. Well, where is that here? Where is my fucking easy mode that I don't ask for in this fucking project? So many things have gone wrong so far. I need my easy mode now.
I got so pissed off for that last try that I went with a different resin this time, making a third copy, one with thicker walls and 3D infill, and only filling the sections where the pins of the feet would go through the base, leaving the rest of it completely intact.
And yeah, I'm gonna stop you there before you leave a comment saying, oh, well, I've never had a problem with Soraya Tech. Maybe you're doing it wrong. Listen. I'm happy that this brand of resin works for you, Chad, but it doesn't for me so far. So I'm not going to continue using it. I don't live in a perfect world like you do, so excuse me if I don't like working with this brand anymore. You can fucking keep it and shut it. I don't want to hear it.
And when I was done with that, I came up with this idea on the fly, and that was to add silica beads inside the cavities and just leaving them in there in case there was any moisture left from the water putty, which I still don't know if that was a problem or not. But this print did feel rock hard. And I just honestly left the silica beads in there for good measure, just in case. The USB cable unfortunately doesn't fit through the hole I made in the design, so I'll just patch it up to just let the cable through on top of the wall. Since this is a lamp, I'm adding some aluminum foil inside to help with the light reflection. I made sure to wait a few days to see how the new printed base reacted after being filled with the water putty, and there was no change at all. With the first two tries, the resin did warp after a couple of days after they were filled, so seeing that there was no reaction at all was my green light to finally glue everything together. While the glue dries on that, I'm gonna paint the magic circle next. I'm using lacquer paint to fully paint over the entire thing because it will be a crucial step for what I'm going to do next. And that is paint everything with black enamel paint. Don't worry, there's a reason for all this, just sit tight. I'm also painting the little butterflies with clear pink and purples, as that's how they look whenever she runs or she stops after running and leaves those little magical trails behind her. Going back to the base, I'm gluing the parts to a wooden plank below, cut to size to give much support with epoxy glue, because leaving the base with just the 3 pieces like that is guaranteed to break. So we don't want that. We want full support. And those silica beads will still remain there for good measure. Let's go back to the butterflies. They need a magical touch, just like this. That's right, my little kitties. We have Hollow in the house again. We did it the first time with the Eternal Sailor Moon Therapy Kiss Kit, and we're doing it again here. Now, if you want to know how this is done, be sure to check out that video because I explain how I did it and in way more detail. And if you're a nail girly, you already know what this is. But for the rest of you, head on over to watch the video. We don't like to gatekeep in this channel, but I do like to make you work for it just a little bit by watching more of my stuff as a form of payment transaction. You watch my video for knowledge, and I get your view that helps me with the algorithm gods. So it's a fair trade, don't you think? I am stacking the butterflies, making them into little trails to put them on the base next to her feet. I'm going to putty the wood to the resin pieces and cutting more wood to cover the circle part of the base to make it look like a single piece. So while the glue cures again, let's go back to that magic circle. Enamel paint doesn't really react to lacquer. So to reveal that magical design, I am taking my finishing tool and removing the paint with enamel thinner, revealing the raised design below. Very, very carefully passing the tip over the surface and then leave the black paint on the bottom. This was just an extruded 3D file I did from the circle design, and I purposely left the design raised like that so that I can remove the paint and let the light pass through and illuminate through the clear resin, just like it does in the game, but this time turning it into a lamp. One alien Prometheus and Covenant later, and all the paint was wiped off. And I noticed then and there that the layer lines were still pretty visible. So to fix that, I added a layer of UV resin to the entire surface to hide them and also to protect the paint. Once cured, I had a really nice finish to it. In fact, I liked it so much that I did a second one because why not? Of course not. I wouldn't submit myself to more madness just for nothing. No, this was actually a request from my client. He wanted a transparent circle and a purple one.
Because getting a commission from me means that you are given the VIP treatment, even if it costs me a little bit of sanity. And it's definitely not because of guilt.
So whatever the customer wants, the customer gets. I finished working on the base off camera because honestly, she was huge. It was hard to try and get it into frame without me not working comfortably on it. So I just made sure to patch, putty, and sand everything smooth. I painted the edges red so that I can mask the very bottom and make a red border or a frame with tape. I then just painted the rest of the base with simple black. Removed the tape and added more of those printed decals that I made earlier with those magic inscriptions on it so it looks like her ribbon is wrapped around the base.
Hey, you finally did it, see? That wasn't so hard. And she looks awesome. Where are you going? We still got some editing to do. Hey, don't do that in front of me. People think we're dating as it is. Dixie, call the doc.
Mr. Coon, how's our queen doing? Better, I hope?
Stripping. So much stripping.
What do you mean? Did the paint keep stripping on the figure?
Oh. She's stripping.
Where is she?
She just ran outside.
Quick, stop her!
Ow! I'm a can! I don't have arms!
I'm on my way.
She's gonna be around here. All right. Be on the lookout. I know that she's gonna be around here, so. Should be, keep your eye. I think I see her. We have a visual. We have a visual. We have a visual. Ah, we got her. We got her. We got her. Hold on. Stop. I'll get her from the right. You go to the left. Go, go, go. Get her! Please, Miss Workshop! Stop struggling! We've been through this before! I forgot the shot! Unhand me! I need to climax!
Hey guys. Remember to like and follow? Subscribe? Leave a comment for the Queenie? She needs words of encouragement right now. And if you feel inclined to do so, leave a super thanks. God knows we need it. And I'm not used to this, but be sure to follow her on all her socials and the ticks, the skies, the grams. She worked really hard on it. I think she deserves our support now, more than ever. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this long video. And what else does she say? Oh yeah, sniff some resin. Bye.
Fly me to the moon. Let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. Jackpot.
Let's rock!